working this job in the summer leading up to my wedding, and I was in a nut factory, and I was over here mixing the nuts, lots and lots of nuts, just mixing the nuts, and over here was this guy, Dimmy, and he was roasting the nuts. And so we had a lot of time to talk, me and Dimmy, and we got to talking about my wedding that was coming up. And the thing I loved about Dimmy was he's really a really honest guy, a straight shooter, just doesn't beat around the bush. He thought I was crazy because I was getting married and I was a virgin, and that I'd never had sex with this woman that I was going to marry. And he was like, how can you do that? What if you two aren't sexually compatible? How could you commit? How could you commit to signing up for life with someone that it's just not going to click with? He thought it was crazy. And for a moment then, as I'm mixing these nuts, I thought, maybe I'm crazy. But I wasn't. And my conviction is that I made the right decision, and I want to talk to you about it tonight. But this is a really important thing, because what Dimmy was saying, what Dimmy was thinking, that is crazy that you would do that, is pretty normal these days. And it's normal from all kinds of different directions. I want to give you just one. This is a little bit odd, but I was watching the movie Planes yesterday with my 2.5-year-old son. Has anyone seen that movie? All right, let me give you a quick rundown. For those of you who don't have children, there is no sex in this movie. I'm just going to put that out there right now. But this movie, it's about a crop duster plane. He's designed to just fly over fields and spray them with all kinds of good chemicals. And but Dusty Crop Hopper is not content with that life. He wants to be a racing plane. And so, against all the odds and using every single Hollywood cliche available to him, he races around the world and beats every other plane. And at the finish of the movie, at the climax of the movie, he's there at the finish line, and all his adoring fans are coming around him, and they're cheering him. And one of them says to him, "You are an inspiration to all of us." And he's like, What, me? He says, "You're an inspiration to all of us who want to do more than just what we are built for. You're an inspiration to us who want to do more than just what we are built for." It comes at the high point of the film, and it sounds like this beautiful, lofty sentiment and inspirational, but if you really think about it, that's pretty foolish. There's a great foolishness in disregarding the way you've been designed in pursuit of some kind of ambition or pleasure. It's a movie like so many others that it's feeding us an assumption, a worldview that says that we must determine our own destiny, that we must break free of the limitations put on us, that there are limitations put on us and they're not right, and we must pursue pleasure. And this is a kids' movie. Just think what messages you're getting from movies that don't involve animated planes. I'm just putting that out there as something that we're wrestling with. And when we hear this kind of question, why is it so important to reserve sex for marriage, that sometimes in our heads, that's what we're butting up against. There's the whole world saying, you don't have to. It's there, take it, enjoy it. Test it out. Find the one who you do have good chemistry with. Do more than just what we're built for. Our world finds it so incredulous that Christians hold out on sex because the world has made sex their God. Romans 1 says that. They pine for it. They long for sexual satisfaction rather than thirsting for God alone. So when we say that we're reserving sexual activity for one unique place and one unique person in our lives, we sound almost blasphemous to them. And at the very least, we sound godless to them because their God is sex. And how could we deny ourselves that transcendent moment, that one sweet moment in life? How would you hold out on that? Why would you do that? How could you leave yourselves out in the cold? How could you follow a God who is such a killjoy? I read this awesome quote yesterday. That saying that God is a killjoy for putting limitations on our sexual expression is like saying that the designer of a roller coaster is a killjoy for putting harnesses on it. That we get so fixated on this harness, that we forget there's a roller coaster. God has made a roller coaster, people. Amen. But why are we even asking this question? Why do we need to ask this question? Well, maybe for you there's something deeper going on, that maybe you're questioning God's love for you. Maybe you're worried that the one person you're with at the moment, unless you give out, they're going to go. Or maybe you think that it's not such a big thing. God is a God of grace. I can slip on this one. I'll be all right. Maybe you've come here and you're not a Christian and you're just thinking, this guy is crazy. This makes no sense at all, that you're just heaping guilt on people. But I want to show you something beautiful. If you look in your Bibles at Mark chapter 10, this is what Abby read out to us before. See, God has woven his plan for our sexuality, our sexual expression throughout the whole Bible. It's not just in one place, it's throughout the whole thing. You get it from page 1 of the Bible. And it's all through the historical books. This sexual ethic, it's spelled out in the law. The Proverbs spend chapters on the importance of guarding yourself from sexual immorality. Song of Solomon mentions it a little bit, for those of you who have married and have read that book. The prophets, they use the heartbreak of sexual infidelity as this powerful picture of God's heartbreak over the spiritual infidelity of his people. It's such a powerful, heartbreaking thing to wrong someone sexually. And God says, that feeling, that's what I'm feeling. The New Testament letters, they speak clearly on conducting yourself with such integrity that sexual immorality can't even be pinned on you, because it's so important. It's all there. It's all there, all through it, and it's clear and it's really good. But I want us to focus tonight on something that Jesus had to say about our sexuality, and something that struck me with this. It's elegant. What Jesus has to say about the way we express ourselves sexually, it's elegant. Simple, perfect. So the context is Jesus is speaking to these Pharisees about divorce. They're actually trying to test him, asking him about divorce and is it lawful? And he says, well, that Moses gave you this law because of the hardness of your heart. But he says it's not meant to be like that. And I'm going to go through it bit by bit. We've got it up there. If you want to read along, it's in the Bible there, 8:46. But from the beginning of creation. This is not a new thing. Like, this is how we were designed from the start. These are the words that Jesus is about to say. These are the words of the one who made us. This is not an irrelevant thing. They are completely relevant to us. What Jesus is about to say is essential for us to live according to our ultimate design. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. This is a direct quote from Genesis 1, right at the start of the book. And it's a simple and yet it's a profound statement. Male and female. The same yet different, complementary, harmonizing, needing each other, one and one. Designed to be sexual, male and female. And therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. There's a lot in that. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. A man shall hold fast to his wife. A man shall commit to one woman and one alone for life. This is not an odd thing in our society. The legal description of marriage in Australia says that marriage means the union of a man and a woman to the exclusion of all others, voluntarily entered into for life. A man and a woman permanently together for life. But that's not just all I want to talk about there. Holding fast to each other, that's vital. But look at this. Look at the people that Jesus mentions in that statement. a man and a woman and his parents. So the camera is rolling back from this happy couple, just blissfully in love, ready to commit themselves to each other, and that's beautiful and it's awesome and it's exactly how it should be. But the camera is panning back, and here is Jesus' picture. The man leaves his father and mother who have been holding fast to each other, who have been blessing this child, whose faithfulness has provided security for their child, who's brought him to this point where he can be faithful to another person, who has seen her parents being faithful to each other. This isn't ideal, all right? But this is what he's saying. We see how it all fits together. That sexuality is not just about these two people coming together and trying something out on each other just to see how it works. Sexuality weaves through the whole fabric of society. Two people coming together, remaining faithful to each other, is not just about those two people. It's about everyone around them. And it's about the security and the faithfulness and the happiness of everyone around them. That they are blessed, their children are blessed, the parents rejoice. And as it goes on and spreads out, this ideal of human sexuality, the whole world is blessed and filled with families being faithful. That's a beautiful picture, right? And elegant. And the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. Sex is designed to be permanently exclusive. One woman and one man for life. Not just for the sake of themselves, not just for the sake of their parents or for their children to come. They've been joined together by who? By God. This is awesome. The wedding ceremony is a supernatural event. I've witnessed 2 miracles on this stage. I've had the privilege of marrying 2 couples right here, right about here. And there was dots on the stage, they knew where to stand. We're standing, both ceremonies, very simple, like 25 minutes. We had 2 people coming up single. And then before God and before God's church, making vows to each other. And somewhere in that moment, with me just like 1 foot away from this thing happening, something miraculous occurred. They were no longer 2, but they were 1. God joins people together. It's a sacred thing. It's a holy thing. But Jesus is speaking about more than just vows here. The 2 shall become one flesh. He's talking about sex. The marriage vows are consummated by the physical act of sex. 2 people become one, and God takes the credit for it. And Jesus says, don't you dare mess with that. This is my thing. 2 people becoming one, the most elegant thing that can happen, and all the blessing that flows out of that. Sex between 2 people is a spiritual act. It's not just some simple physical activity that's just a little bit more intimate than shaking hands. It's spiritual. It's not temporary. It's a permanent thing. John Piper says, sex is the physical capstone of a personal, spiritual, emotional union of 2 human beings. It's miraculous. Verse 10, and in the house the disciples asked him again about this matter, and he said to them, whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery against her. And if she divorces her husband and marries another, she commits adultery. This is 2 people together for life, no one else coming in. Just 2 people married before God, joined together before God. And Jesus is setting a really high standard. He is raising the bar and saying, this is what it's meant to be. This is how we are to live sexually. He's saying you can't take a casual view of sex because it's meant to be so much better. Sex is God's idea. It's good. It's right. And it weaves humanity together and it keeps humanity flourishing. And you read this and you see that you were designed to have sex with just one other person. And you can't pretend that God is not involved in sex, that he is uniting two people together with it. And sex is permanent. It's not something that just goes and is over and done with in a night. It's permanent. It's meant to be. It's meant to linger. And you look at how Jesus has described it there, it's elegant and it's perfect. It's so simple, but it's so beautiful. And there's so much good that comes out of it. And anything we do to mess with that, anything we do that is not that, is just going to complicate it and make it imperfect and hurtful and unsafe and confusing, and that fabric unwinds and unravels and pain comes in and heartbreak. And I've seen it again and again, the heartbreaking effects of messing up Jesus' elegant plan for sexuality and seeing it play out in people so close to me. I've got a close friend, who in his teenage years, he wasn't a Christian, and he had girlfriends, and he slept with those girlfriends, and he became a Christian. And then he got married, and he said, I struggle. I wrestle because of the memories of all of that. It lingers with me. It haunts me. Or the person who's kept themselves pure, who knows all this stuff and says, yes, this is what I want for my life. And then they realize that someone else hasn't. They've let them down. And they feel hurt and betrayed by that. And no matter how careful you're being, someone else can let you down like that. I saw two Christians, both in separate marriages, both of those marriages really struggling, and those two Christians coming together, sleeping with each other to console each other. And then watching as both of those marriages imploded. As all four of those people dealt with intense feelings of hurt and guilt and betrayal and failure, and then seeing the devastation of those two marriages falling apart spread to their families and their friends. As we all tried to struggle with and comprehend what had happened, and what are we meant to do in this situation? How are we meant to support them? And where are we meant to take sides? And what are we meant to do from this point on? And the awkward mess of people wondering what to do with this. And the second guessing and the finger pointing and the anger and the silence that was triggered from this one foolish act. There was unhealthiness going on, but this one foolish act, and a whole friendship group just fell apart. Or the couple who are convinced that in each other they have found the one. And I'm going to marry this person. The wedding day is not yet, but that doesn't matter. I'm going to commit to this person. And so they don't wait till the wedding day, and they sleep with each other. And the wedding day doesn't ever come. And all they're left with is hurt. Or speaking with the Christian who's stuffed up again. And they're not sure whether anyone's ever going to trust them again. And I'm not sure whether I can trust them again. Or the questioning and the guilt that lingers years after a broken sexual relationship. This is meant to linger. It lingers and it hurts. Or the insecurity that plagues a Christian husband wondering whether his sexual performance compares to the performance of all of his wife's previous sexual partners. That's a haunting thing. marriage is hard, and to come into it with something like that spinning around in your head, that's unfair. Jesus has said sex is meant to be simple and elegant and beautiful and hold everything together. And when we mess it up, when we do something that breaks that, it never gets easier. When we disregard what he said about how he has designed us, it never gets easier or simpler. It never gets more elegant. It never gets better. He set a high standard for sexual life because he knows anything lower than that is going to hurt us. It's going to hurt us. So there are a lot of reasons why sex outside of marriage is wrong, and why it can hurt, and why it is so important to reserve sex for marriage. And the hurt and the devastation and the fallout that can come from that, but I don't want that to be our main motivation. I want to give us a better motivation. I want to get a little bit pastoral. I want us to look at the benefits and why it's so right to reserve sex for marriage. So why is it so important to reserve sex for marriage? Let me tell you. Number one, for what you will gain. And I'm saying this to the young people who still have the opportunity. And I'm saying this to the young people who don't have the opportunity but have the moment now to move in the right direction. And I'm saying this for those of us who are married as well. Reserve sex for marriage. Keep it there, because these are the rewards, people. For what you will gain. You'll gain a pure heart. A pure heart. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the pure in heart who don't have any of this history behind them, because when they come into a marriage, there's no one else in their heads, that they're just thinking completely of their partner, and it's beautiful. That's how it's meant to be. No one else comes in, pure in heart. You'll gain freedom from guilt. There's nothing to regret in reserving sex for marriage. You'll gain the delight of just one person, no one else, just that one person. That is a sweet thing. You gain the freedom to fail. This might sound shocking, and it was shocking to me when I got married. Sex isn't a straightforward skill. You might not master it first go. It's probably not going to be mind-blowing the first time you go for it. If it ever was, my goodness, you are blessed. There might be complications. Think of it. You can't nail dancing with someone first time. But here's the cool thing, right? Here is the cool thing. If you have kept yourself pure, if it's just you and your marriage partner and that's it and no one else in the picture, then nothing else matters. Stumble, trip, make all the mistakes you want. They're not going to walk out on you. Man, this was such a blessing for me. I'm going to get honest and personal now. But it wasn't straightforward for me and Claire. But what a comfort it was for me to know that I wasn't trying to figure out this skill with someone who hadn't completely and entirely given herself to me already, who was never going to walk out on me, who was never going to be comparing me to someone else who might be better at this skill. It was just me and her. Oh, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Why is it so important to reserve sex for marriage? Because you gain so much, but you also give so much. For what you will give, you give a precious gift to your partner. They are not wondering. They are not thinking of you comparing yourself with comparing them with anyone. There's no pressure on them. It's just you and them. There is no hurt from past sin of having sex with someone else. You're not carrying baggage into this marriage. You give them a baggage-free spouse. You give them trust and security and permanence. If you reserve sex for marriage, you are showing your spouse that you are someone who can be trusted. You've shown your spouse that you value them most. You've kept our world free of hurt. It's not just about you two. But when you keep yourself sexually pure, when you reserve sex for marriage, you're not hurting other people either. You give to society by that. You get that? You give to society. Society benefits from our sexual purity. You've set an example for others to follow. I was a virgin at 29. I got married as a virgin. It can be done. You can do it. Follow my example. I wasn't perfect, but I trusted in God in that. And that's a powerful thing in this world. Young people, don't give up. Young adults, you're in your mid-20s. I nearly made it through my 20s. I didn't have to, but I nearly made it through my 20s. You can do it. Don't give in. People have gone before you and have been faithful, and we want to give you that example. Be faithful. Follow Jesus' elegant plan for sexuality. It is the best. You can do it. Follow Jesus' elegant plan for sexuality. Reserve yourself for marriage. Reserve sex for marriage because of how you will glorify God in it. You will have a testimony that is startling. 1 Thessalonians 4:7 says, "For God has not called us for impurity, but in holiness." In our hypersexualized world, a person with sexual integrity, a person who says, I am not going to play around with my sexuality. I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to honor it. I'm going to reserve that. For one person, that is startling in this world. You will stand out. You will have a powerful testimony in this world. Be startling. Don't settle for any less than that. Our God deserves that. You glorify God by that. You will find your pleasure in God alone. You're not only showing obedience to God and startling the world by that, but you are showing that you have found much greater satisfaction in His love than in any sexual act. And that is huge. That is huge. Show people that God is worth that. And here's another thing, is you illustrate the mystery of Christ. Ephesians 5 talks about marriage being a physical representation of the selfless love of Jesus Christ for His bride, the church. And the beauty of this mystery comes alive in a faithful marriage. Two people who have been selfless, keeping themselves pure for each other, so that the whole world can see an example of selfless love, of purity, of how Jesus loves the church. You will glorify God by reserving sex for marriage. There's 3 really good reasons. You will gain, you will give, and you will glorify God. And I just want to say that I know there are people in this room who have neglected to reserve sex for marriage. And that's a tragedy. And I know you know it's a tragedy. And I know some of you are struggling with the hurt and the disappointment of all of that. And I know that you're struggling with the consequences of all of that. And I know that some of you are so hurt because those consequences don't go away. They might never go away. The beauty of the gospel is that Jesus Christ died for sinners. We have all fallen short, and we are all suffering consequences. We've all, one way or another, fallen short of Jesus' glorious standard, and we're all desperately in need of his forgiveness. And therefore, if anyone is in Christ, she is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. And Jesus now sees you in this way as a new creation. The old has passed away. And he will nurse you through this hurt. He knows these consequences are still there, and he knows your heart in them, and he knows how to help you through that and nurse you through that. And most of all, he will restore you, and you are pure in his sight. Yes. And you need to cling on to that, because you are going to feel like you're not, and you are in his sight. You are pure. You're still facing all these horrible consequences down here for what you've done and what other people have done to you in the past, but you are pure in his sight, and you desperately need to hold on to that. Don't throw in the towel. You can pursue purity. You can still pursue purity. You can still give and gain and glorify in all of that. So I want to give you a little bit of practical advice to finish with. Hopefully I've convinced you why it's so important to reserve sex for marriage. And they're like, cool. And I've got some really good reasons about how can I do it. I'm going to give you a little bit of practical advice, all right? And here it is. See yourself and the people around you as more than just sexual beings. In 1 Timothy, Paul tells the young Timothy to encourage younger women as sisters in all purity. Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father. Encourage younger men as brothers. Encourage older women as mothers. Encourage younger women as sisters in all purity. Let me unpack this for you. This is significant on a few different levels. First of all, this reminds us how connected we all really are, like brothers and sisters. There is no one for whom sex is truly inconsequential. Every single person matters. You cannot have sex with someone and it not matter. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter whether you're paying or not, whether you will never see them again or not. That matters. Second, this is for Christians. Every other Christian is your spiritual sibling. And they need to be treated with absolute purity. This means that you cannot consider sex with another Christian unless you are married to them. Here's some practical advice. Touch them only how you would touch your sibling. Christian, touch them only how you would touch your sibling. It's a high standard. Third, as your sister or brother, this person is not just your spiritual sibling. This person is a child of God. And you are a child of God, and you are both heirs with Christ. So think about this. Jesus Christ is this person's spiritual older brother. How would her older brother want you to treat her? I wouldn't mess with her older brother. How would he want you to treat her? With purity, with respect, as her sister, as his sister. Look at people as more than just sexual beings. We're so much more than that. Fourth, this person is an eternal being, an heir with you of the grace of life, Peter says in his first letter. An heir with you of the grace of life. Consider deeply how you might care for this person in such a way that keeps them for this eternal grace. And don't do anything to mess with that. Christian, if you are with a Christian, that person is an eternal being, an eternal child of God. They are your sibling, and they deserve to be treated with the utmost purity. So see yourself and the people around you as more than just sexual beings. That, my goodness, so much more. And then see yourself the way Jesus sees you. Paul says in 2 Corinthians 11, he's talking about the Corinthian church. But what he's saying about them is what Jesus says about us. For I feel a divine jealousy for you, since I betrothed you to one husband to present you as a pure virgin to Christ. That's how Jesus Christ sees you, as pure. So be pure, be startling. Show the world, show each other that we are pure. So that's how Jesus sees you. God has given us a glorious, elegant plan for our sexuality. Trust Him with it. Because that plan will shield you from all kinds of hurt and disappointment. And more importantly, it will open up a whole world of blessing for you and for others and for the whole world. Even bigger, God has given us a glorious, elegant plan for our souls. He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die, to be our righteousness. Trust Him with your soul, because He will heal you from a world of hurt and disappointment. And more importantly, as you trust Him, as you put your faith in Jesus, He will open up a whole world of blessing, and the whole world will be blessed through Him.